In the quiet village of Windale, there stood a cemetery unlike any other, a place where silence was so deep it almost seemed alive. Travelers who passed by claimed that the air inside those iron gates was different, heavier, as though the ground itself remembered every story, every secret buried beneath its soil. The people of Windale often said that it was not just a resting place for the dead, but a place where the living were reminded of their own fragility. Among the moss-covered tombstones lay centuries of history. Some graves had eroded so badly that the names were no longer visible, while others stood tall, their carvings sharp, like stubborn voices refusing to fade into time. At the center of this sacred land rose a massive oak tree, so old and wide that its roots seemed to weave into the very bones of the earth. For generations, the townspeople whispered that the tree was not just a tree, it was the cemetery's guardian, a witness to every vow, every betrayal, every soul that never left. The villagers held on to one strange belief. As long as the wind blew softly from the west, the cemetery would remain peaceful, undisturbed, and safe. But if the wind ever turned, if it came from the east, then the balance would break. For years, this was nothing more than an old superstition, a tale told to children to keep them from wandering too close to the graves after dusk. But one night, the wind changed. It began with a sharp coldness in the air, a sudden gust that swept through Windale's narrow streets. Curtains shivered in closed windows, dogs whimpered in their sleep, and old wooden signs creaked as though the village itself was unsettled. The breeze no longer carried the softness of the west. It came from the east, biting and sharp, laced with something unnatural. That same night, Alex, a young photographer with an obsession for the supernatural, made his way toward the cemetery. He had always been fascinated by what lay beyond human sight. While others feared the dark, Alex chased it, convinced that truth and horror often walked hand in hand. With his camera hanging from his neck and a flashlight clutched tightly in his hand, he entered the graveyard, eager to find proof of what others only whispered about. The further he walked among the graves, the stranger the air became. The shift in the wind carried faint whispers, like broken words that slipped just out of reach. Now and then he thought he heard soft cries, sorrowful, aching sounds that rose and fell with the rustling leaves. Every step he took seemed heavier than the last, as if the earth itself wanted him to turn back. When Alex reached the great oak, he stopped. The tree loomed above him, its branches stretching out like skeletal arms. The air beneath it was colder than anywhere else in the cemetery, and the invisible weight pressing against him was nearly unbearable. He raised his camera and began to take photographs, his shutter clicking in the silence. Part of him hoped for nothing, but another part of him prayed that he would capture something the eye could not see.
Hours passed and nothing happened. No movement, no shadows, only the endless quiet. Disappointment began to sink in. He turned, preparing to leave, when the air split with a sound so sharp it froze him in place. A piercing whistle, unnatural and chilling, echoed through the cemetery. Almost instantly, he heard the earth shifting, soil breaking apart, as though something beneath the ground was clawing its way to the surface. Alex's flashlight darted frantically until it landed on one of the oldest graves. His heart pounded against his chest. The tomb had cracked open, its stone lid askew, the dirt around it freshly disturbed. His breath caught as he realized what that meant. Something had emerged. Then he saw it. A figure began to form, not a shadow, not a ghost, but something more real and yet not entirely of this world. It was shaped like a person, but its edges wavered as though it was made from fog and moonlight. The mist around the cemetery thickened, and from it the figure advanced, step by slow step, until it stood only a few meters away. Alex's legs trembled. He wanted to run, but his body betrayed him. The figure leaned closer. Its voice was no louder than a whisper, yet it filled the air like thunder. "The wind has changed. It has set us free." Those words sent a chill through his blood. He did not understand them, but he felt them. Something ancient, something buried deep within the earth had been disturbed, and now it was awake. Instinct took over. Alex lifted his camera and began snapping photos one after another, desperate to hold on to proof of what he was witnessing. The clicks of the shutter echoed in the dark as his fear mounted. But the figure seemed to notice. With each flash, it grew fainter, its form breaking apart like smoke scattering in the wind. Finally, it dissolved completely, leaving Alex alone beneath the oak. The silence that followed was deafening. His breath shallow, his hands trembling, Alex turned and ran. He didn't stop until he reached his small house in the village, his lungs burning, his heart still hammering. The first thing he did was check his camera. As the images loaded, his stomach twisted. On every photo, the figure was there, blurred, indistinct, but undeniably present. And in the background, always watching, always towering, stood the oak tree, dark and menacing against the fog. By morning, word of his encounter had spread through Windale. People whispered of the east wind, of the opened grave, of the curse that had long been warned about. That night had changed something forever. For the first time in memory, the wind did not shift back. It continued to blow from the east, sharp and unrelenting, a constant reminder that the dead were no longer entirely at rest. Alex never returned to the cemetery alone, but he did not turn away from what he had seen. Instead, he devoted his life to chasing the unknown, traveling to places haunted by shadows, guided by the conviction that some truths could only be found in darkness. And though he encountered countless mysteries afterward, nothing ever matched the night when the wind first changed in Windale, when the line between the living and the dead was broken, and a whisper in the dark revealed that silence was never truly empty.